Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr here today for Spellbinders, and I am sharing 4 cards created with my brand new collection for Spellbinders called Wedding Season. There are 5 SKUs in this collection, and I'm going to be using all 5 for the 4 cards I'm sharing with you today, as well as using some great basics from Spellbinders as far as dies and glimmer plates to kind of finish off the edges of my cards with that elegant glimmered border. We're going to start with a background panel that measures 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches, trimmed from Fun Stamper's Journey Denim Days cardstock. Then I'm going to temporarily adhere this Framed Details Glimmer Plate by Lori Willison to my cardstock with some silver foil, and I am going to foil a beautiful edge to the card. I really love the look of a glimmered edge or some other kind of decorative edge to kind of draw your eye into the detail on the cards. Glimmering works, or foiling, which is what this is, really adds that elegant touch to a card that I think is so fantastic for wedding designs. There's many other occasions as well, but I just love that little touch of glimmer and foiling to the wedding cards. And all of my cards today are going to feature some sort of foiling. I used a We Are Memory Keepers foil cutter that I have my foil on, which is fantastic because it holds it in place. That's the tool I was just using, and you're going to see that throughout the video. It's something kind of new to my craft space that I saw somewhere else. Someone mentioned it to me on Instagram actually, and I went out and bought one, and it is fantastic because the holder holds your foil in place. You can see it here, and then you can use the magnetic ruler because the little base there, that aqua base, is magnetic, and you can use the trimmer that comes with it or another type of rotary cutter and trim your foil perfectly. So it's super handy, especially if you're doing like I'm doing today, where you're creating a bunch of cards. Over on the left side of the screen, I have my Glimmer hot foil system. I am heating that up and getting it ready to foil the framed border, that framed details border. While I'm waiting for everything to heat up and get ready, I did take some sentiments from my collection. These are the Glimmering Wedding Wishes sentiments, and I'm lining them up on some Riverstone dark gray cardstock. Really quick, once I have glimmered my frame, you can see there's a little over foiling in a few spots. That is absolutely fine. I always just take a sand eraser and very gently erase away that over foil. I also did not run it all the way through my die cutting machine, which was a bit of a bummer. You can see I'm missing a little spot in that lower left corner. I will be positioning that in the lower left corner because it's mostly going to be hidden by the wedding dress. I decided to just go with it. I think it's always important to mention those things in my videos when things don't always go as planned, and how I fix it so that I don't have to redo a bunch of things. I also want to mention that I taped together the word and then they lived, 2 phrases from my Glimmering Wedding Wishes together with some repositionable purple tape and ran it through my hot foil system, but they were so close together. The way I get around this is I actually like to flip the purple tape over and then line up my sentiments on that tape. This is going to hold them perfectly in place if you're building a strip like I'm doing here, and it will show you if they're too close together so that the words run together. I purposely left that in because I really wanted to show you guys that if you just butt the dies, the glimmer plates, pardon me, right next to each other, it will often look like a run-on word. And so I like to just use that purple tape, kind of get them positioned, put them in place, and then I'm going to take my little thin strip there that I trimmed, and I'm going to place that underneath, flip it over, heat up my Glimmer hot foil system, run it through the die cutting machine, and pull away my glimmer plates, and look how perfect that looks now. It looks like that is the strip and how it comes. That is one of the things I absolutely love about being able to mix and match these glimmering wedding wishes. So you can build all kinds of sentiment phrases. I especially love them combined with the scripty die cut sentiments. I have a bride and groom sentiment and a happily ever after sentiment. Those are individual sentiment SKUs. And then in the wedding cake set, there's a Mr. and a Mrs. that can be a cake topper, or it also can be used as a sentiment itself. So I really love the combination of the two. I went and grabbed a Spellbinders club kit probably, or there's other glimmer sets from Spellbinders that have the die to trim a strip. You can also just trim it into a strip with your paper trimmer if you want to. I went ahead and grabbed a die and die cut the phrase "and they lived." And then I am taking what I call the focal point of my collection, the wedding dress and tux. This was the item that I was the most excited about as far as the focal point and kind of what everything else was built upon. I absolutely love a wedding dress and tux die. And these can be built in several different ways. I'm kind of showing you all the pieces here as I'm building the dress and tux. The dress can be sleeveless or have straps. My second card I'm going to create will have some straps. This one is strapless. It can be die cut from many different kinds of specialty cardstock. I did a glitter cardstock here almost to look like a all over sequin dress. The tux can be done in multiple colors. You could do all kinds of things with that. I did some cards for the Spellbinders YouTube channel where you can look at some different options for tuxes. I think both that I did today are in some sort of black cardstock. This is the pearled black cardstock here. It has gray lapels. My other one is going to be a black basic cardstock, and then it's going to have the pearled lapels, which is kind of probably hard to see in real life, but I love that little touch for that. You can do, like I said, you can do these in so many different colors and really have fun with it building the design. Here is that happily ever after sentiment. So fun. I die cut that from some silver mirror cardstock. And the navy background really just creates that elegant look. And a foiled border, or you could even hand draw a border with a white pen or a silver pen or gold pen, whatever you want to do. It just draws your eye in and gives a nice finished edge to the whole design. So now that I kind of have everything laid out and the spacing the way I want, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling with the trousers first that I want to adhere so that the dress can kind of go in front a little bit. You can see that. The glitter cardstock, it's a little harder to see in video, but you can see it has some great debossed areas in that. And then we're going to simply add some pearled basics die cut accessories. The bow is actually from the Mr. and Mrs. wedding cake set. It works to adorn the cake, and it also works beautifully to decorate the dress if you want to. If you want to add some sort of different embellishment to the dress, you can very easily do that. It's sized to work perfectly there. Then we're building our tux. We've got the little shirt sleeves underneath the shirt sleeves underneath the jacket sleeve, and just kind of slowly building. Now, something that I love about the tux, we have options there as well as far as neckwear. There's a bow tie and a regular tie. We're going to use a regular tie for this card, and on my second one I'll show you the bow tie, which is really, really fun. And then you can even see the button detail there on the jacket, which is a great place to add a little mini gemstone to adorn the jacket, or you could use Nouveau crystal drops, other kind of things like that. You could even inlay if you wanted to. They're pretty teeny tiny, so I generally will use a gemstone or do a little Nouveau crystal drop. Those are my two favorite ways to add a little buttons to that jacket and really finish it off. There's even the little pieces for the shirt collar, which I think are fantastic. Just every little detail has been thought about with this design. These can be used in so many ways. I really just can't say enough about these because I think they turned out amazing. We're going to take the Happily Ever After, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to kind of tip it diagonally. I think it looks really pretty, and part of it will overlap the tucks just a little bit. All of the sentiment will overlap the tucks just a tiny bit. But that way I make sure and leave enough room for everything. And then I'm placing an acrylic block on top to hold that down in place until the liquid glue dries. We have some foam adhesive strips on the back of our glimmered Wedding Wishes sentiment, so our sentiment reads, "And they lived happily ever after." Finishing details now. I have some little flowers and leaves. We're going to have the boutonniere here on the lapel of the tucks. That's going to be a little green leaf and then a little red flower. And then just for a little punch of extra flowers, I use the same die. And again, this is all from the Wedding Dress and Tuck set. We're going to die cut multiples of these and just embellish both of those scripty ends of Happily Ever After. And then finish the center of all of the flowers with a little gemstone, a little crystal gemstone to add some sparkle and fun. Because I'm using the foam double-sided mat from Spellbinders and then the Tool-in-One with the stylus tip on the end, I'm rolling that in the center of the flowers to give the flowers a little bit more shape, which is really a fun little technique as well. Here are those little black gems that I was talking about, adorning the tucks to finish that off. And then of course the crystal gems in the center of all of our little flowers. The Tool-in-One piercing end works great to kind of pick those up and pop those in place. And then we're simply going to adhere this whole panel to a white side fold card base to finish the design. Let's go ahead and work on our second card featuring the wedding dress and tucks. This time I am going to glimmer a border using the Essential Glimmer rectangles, which if you've seen any of my Spellbinders videos in the last few weeks, you know that I absolutely think this is a fantastic essential to have in your craft stash if you love foiling. I'm going to foil this again with some silver foil around the edges of some Fun Stamper's Journey Tin Pail cardstock, which is a really, really beautiful light gray cardstock. And then we're going to die cut this. You could also trim it if you wanted to, with the Essential Rectangles dies, which is going to make our panel 4 inches by 5 1/4. Using that repositionable tape again, we are going to line up our words to the happy couple. And that is going to give us a couple of phrases because we're actually going to foil congratulations and then we're going to foil the phrase to the happy couple. But I've pieced those together to make it 2 strips that we can stack one on top of another. So for this card, there's not going to be a die cut sentiment. The sentiment's going to be our sentiment strips that we layer over the wedding dress and tucks. Look how pretty those are. Again, there was a little overfoiling. I probably used a little too much foil. I'm going to very, very carefully take a sand eraser and just remove that overfoiling before I take a strip die from another Spellbinders kit that I had. And there are several that they come in. You probably have one on hand at home or another kind of strip die because they are very popular. You can use anything like that. This is a nice long one. And I'm going to die cut these into strips for my card. There was a couple little overfoiling places that I just wanted to make sure I got taken care of. This is a great way to add a beautiful little foiled sentiment to the design, as well as kind of incorporated into the design. It's going to overlap our wedding dress and tucks. So I die cut one edge, then I line it back up with the die, or one side I should say, and then I cut the other side so that it's perfectly even. As I was mentioning, when I put together the first wedding dress and tucks, you can die cut these from any kind of cardstock. And this is the Essential Rectangles die that I used to die cut the foiled border. So this time, instead of glitter cardstock, our first wedding dress was white glitter. This is going to be the Pearl Basics, and I'm going to use the straps to give this dress little spaghetti straps up top. And then we're going to use the little flower and leaves that you can use for the boutonniere and that we used for embellishment on the first card. We're going to use those to embellish the dress as well. Pretty simply, we're not going to go over the top or anything like that, but just have a little floral at the waistline and then a little one down at the bottom of the dress. Something else to keep in mind, you definitely wouldn't have to use these only for wedding. That could be a cute little short dress without the bottom part if you wanted to, and you could do other kinds of cards. You know, there are just other things that could be done with this if you want to switch up your sentiment and not have it be wedding. So there's the dress with straps. We've also started to build the tucks. I mentioned a little earlier, the tux was actually die cut from black cardstock, just a regular black cardstock here. This is the black licorice from Fun Stamper's Journey, but the lapels and the bow tie will be from the Pearled Basics black cardstock. So they'll have a tiny bit of shimmer to them. I'm not sure that it translates great on camera, but in real life, there's just enough little difference that I think it's super special. Another item that I find really handy when dealing with die cuts, period, any kind of die cuts, is a nice pair of craft tweezers to hold on to those little pieces as you put glue on them, or to pick them up and put them exactly where you want them to go. So there is our wedding dress and tux. Still have a little embellishing to do, but let's add our sentiments with foam adhesive, and then we can go in and finish off the card. So we're going to start with the congratulations. We're just going to kind of center it there in the bottom half of the card, or right past the half point line, I should say. And there's our two strips. Now to dress this up and make this card super elegant, we are also going to add some florals. And the florals here are all die cut from either whipped cream cardstock for the white flowers, and then a silver mirror cardstock, and I'm using the flowers from the Mr. and Mrs. Wedding Cake set. So these can be used to adorn the cake. They can be used to add some embellishment to your other cards. I will be using these on the next card I create as well that doesn't feature the wedding cake either. They're just a fantastic basic that adds so much to this design. So we're going to have a little floral cluster up high, and then we're going to have a little floral cluster down below. And I purposely kept the colors of my flowers to whites and silvers. I didn't want to do anything with color because I really was going for that silver, white, black, elegant look here. The only little touch of greenery is going to just be the leaves on the boutonniere, which we will add in a second. But on the dress, again, it's all going to be white and silver. And the tweezers come in super handy here, as these are all little teeny tiny pieces. But this little teeny tiny flower is so fantastic for embellishing the dress and the lapel of the tux. So we'll add just a few more little pieces here. We want to add crystal clear gems to the center of the flowers on the card to finish them off. You could also use Nouveau Crystal drops. That would be awesome. Any kind of little gem, pearl gems, solid silver gems, whatever your heart desires there. Then we're going to place this on a white top fold card base. It is slightly smaller than A2 size, so it'll have a nice white border all the way around. And look at that beautiful foiling. For my next card, this is going to be a sentiment heavy card. So we're kind of get away from the large image focal point, and this one is going to focus on the sentiment. Very much like our last card, we are going to foil a border with the Essential Glimmer rectangles. This is a size smaller than the last one, but while we're glimmering this border, we're also going to glimmer several of the words directly into the rectangle. So we're not going to trim these into strips this time. We are going to be using a combination of the Glimmering Wedding Wishes with the Bride and Groom die cut sentiment. I want to leave room for that bride and groom sentiment, but I want to piece together my phrases and kind of temporarily hold those in place on this Fun Stampers Journey Riverstone cardstock. This is a nice, beautiful dark gray cardstock with all of this so I can glimmer it all at once. So I'm really taking my time, lining them up. I'm using my bride and groom just kind of as a guide and getting everything right where I want it to go before I tape it in place. And then we can glimmer everything at once, which is so fantastic. So a little repositionable tape is your best friend when glimmering. I'm so particular about where I want things to go that I find it easiest to just kind of tape it down. So once we have that, let's go ahead and run that through our Glimmer hot foil system. We're going to then peel away and look at this rectangle we're left with. There is a tiny bit of overfoiling. Again, I'll just take my sand eraser and remove that. I foiled on a larger piece of cardstock than I needed to start because I was a little worried about trying to line that up with the exact size panel. If you are ever worried about that, just start with a little bit bigger cardstock base. Then I took an Essential Rectangles die, the same one I used for the last card, and we're going to die cut this. Be sure not to get your tape on the foiling because it can lift and remove some of that foiling, which will ruin the look of your card. This is going to make our background panel measure 5 1/4 by 4 inches. The bride and groom sentiment was die cut from the Silver Mirror cardstock. So it's that gorgeous cardstock that I've been using throughout that really looks amazing, but I wanted this to be popped up. I did adhere the silver foil cardstock to Fun Foam with Stick It adhesive, so it has a little bit of foam under it to lift it up. If you don't have that, you could always die cut the sentiment several times from white cardstock and finish with a Silver Mirror or a specialty cardstock on top of that for that little bit of dimension. And then I'm just going to very, very slowly position the bride and groom sentiment in between my foiled sentiments to finish the design. This is such a great way to make a big impact for a card, and you're not adding it doesn't have a huge die cut image necessarily. It just, like I said, focuses on the sentiment. And this could be done with any of the sentiments, the bride and groom sentiment, the happily ever after sentiment, or even that Mr. and Mrs. sentiment that is the cake topper in the wedding cake set that I'll be showing you here in a minute. Then to finish off the card, of course, we are going to add some florals. We're going to have a little floral cluster up high and one down below. I used several colors of Fun Stampers Journey cardstock here, but I kept it very muted just to kind of keep it very elegant. We've got little light yellow and white flowers with some greenery. And there's a couple of different greenery pieces. I just die cut a bunch of them and then I'm assembling them up at the top and the bottom. You could do these in any color to match the wedding theme very easily. And I think the flowers add so much to this design. Definitely a beautiful little way to finish off a card. So let's do that down at the bottom just to kind of help frame it all up. And I really wanted to showcase some of my favorite borders and frames from Spellbinders used with my collection so that you can see what fantastic basics they are for any kind of card design. I can't say enough great things about these Essentials glimmering frames. There's rectangles and circles and ovals and squares, and they are just phenomenal. And they work so great with the essential dies. They mix and match to create some really beautiful background panels. Once I have all of my little flowers here, I am going to adorn the center again with the little crystal clear gemstones, just whatever you have in your stash. My last card, I did kind of do something a little bit different color-wise. I opted to do a gold foil instead of a silver foil, which I know I've done a lot of silver foil here, so I wanted to show the gold foil for this last card design. And you definitely can mix and match so much. This is another set, very much like the wedding dress, where you are building this cake to look exactly the way you want it to look. So this is called the Mr. and Mrs. Wedding Cake. We are starting with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel of Fun Stamper's Journey oatmeal cookie cardstock, and we are foiling it with the framed details frame. So that first frame that we use, this is from, again, from my friend Lori Willison for Spellbinders. It's a fantastic border die. I absolutely love this, and really creates a great elegant look. We're going to foil this with gold on the oatmeal cookie cardstock. Remove some of that overfoiling. I had several little areas of overfoiling, so just really quickly taking the sand eraser and removing those. It looks like mostly from the corners. And then off camera, I did die cut all the components for my card so that it was easy to assemble. So there are layers for the cake. You can use the little dots or without. You wouldn't have to. So there's the border and then the inside piece. And I'll show you that here in a second. I'll grab the die set. I did die cut my cake from the Pearl Basics white cardstock, and I'm layering it over gold foil cardstock and then putting the small cake layer on the larger one. And I'm starting pretty low. I want to make sure I leave myself enough space to pop up my cake topper. There are these little stick pieces. I die cut 2 of those from gold foil or gold mirror cardstock, and then the Mr. and Mrs. from gold mirror cardstock to have the not only cake topper but sentiment for our card. These little strips here, here's the set I wanted to show you really quick, all the little pieces. So we're going to put the little frosting layers, the little scallopy layers at the top, middle, and bottom. We have 2 small ones I'm using and then the bigger one. And again, those are all from the Pearl Basics white cardstock. So it has a nice little bit of shimmery sheen to it. And then we've got lots and lots of little flowers. This is from Peaches and Cream, Fun Stamper's Journey cardstock, Rustic Rose, and Banana Cream. So the flowers are actually not white. They're a little bit, I call them ivory, and they're just a beautiful little ivory color that I think looks very, very elegant against that craft colored background. And then the leaves are all gold, so gold mirror. We're going to adorn the cake. There's little scallops I glued in place. That little bow that I used to embellish that first wedding dress, we used that for the cake here today. It comes in this set. And then we're just going to add lots of little flowers and then finish with some gold gems or gold nouveau crystal drops, whatever you want, in the center of the flowers to tie back to the design. So very easy, but very, very beautiful. You could definitely stamp a sentiment inside the card if you wanted to, or even foil a panel with the Glimmering Wedding Wishes and place it inside the card to finish off the design. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 4 cards created with my Spellbinders Wedding Season collection. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Spellbinders dies and glimmering plates that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.